succeed together here at PhilSci-Hub Research University. Welcome to PhilSci-Hub Research University, your ultimate guide on your next research project.
We will lay down the best practices in research ideation, literature review, experimental design, and data analysis to guide you as you carry out your research project. Learn from the PhilSci-Hub team of research scientists and some invited subject matter experts. PhilSci-Hub Research University will be your personal coach through every stage of your research project, from ideation to final assessment.
And the best part? It's absolutely free.
Visit us at philscihub.com and be part of this learning journey.
Let's learn and succeed together here at PhilSci-Hub Research University.
Magandang umaga po sa ating lahat. Welcome to the Filipino Science Hub. Thank you for your continued support to this online platform. To our new participants, thank you for checking us out today, and we would like to officially welcome you to the PhilSci-Hub family. So bago po tayo magsimula, I would like to share some house rules in order to facilitate a smooth session for everyone. For our Zoom participants, we would appreciate it if you could turn your audio and video cameras off during the webinar. If you have questions or comments, feel free to type them on our Zoom chat box or YouTube live comments, and we will try to accommodate as much questions and comments as possible. After the talk, we will have a 30-minute Q&A where the Zoom participants will have the opportunity to ask their questions live. We would also like to request for everyone to not record the webinar. The full video of the session will be posted on our official YouTube channel. For those who would like to receive a certificate of participation, a Google form link will be posted on our Zoom chat box, YouTube live comments, and YouTube video description towards the end of the webinar. Please make sure that you enter the correct information, especially your email address, to ensure receipt of the certificate. Also, for you to obtain the certificate, you will need to subscribe to our YouTube channel as well as follow our page on Facebook. Please note that we receive hundreds of requests and it takes around 7 days or so to process all the certificates. If you do not receive your certificate after a week, please feel free to send us a message on Facebook or email us at philscihub@gmail.com. So again, welcome po sa PhilSci-Hub. Welcome to all our Zoom participants and our YouTube live viewers. For those who are new and may not be familiar with who we are and what we do, allow me to share our mission and vision in the next few minutes. Filipino Science Hub is an online platform founded by our CEO, Filipino scientist Dr. Jeffrey Camacho Bunkin, back in 2012. Currently, we are a registered nonprofit organization based in Houston, Texas, United States. Our mission is to promote STEM education and the culture of research among students and teachers in the Philippines and abroad. Our current global leadership team is comprised of volunteer Filipino scientists and seasoned STEM educators from different parts of the world. Our vision is to see a technology and innovation-driven Philippines, and we believe that this can be achieved by creating a new generation of well-rounded Filipino STEM enthusiasts. This vision is being carried out via our two major programs, the PhilSci-Hub Ed program and PhilSci-Hub Research University. Through PhilSci-Hub Ed, we are able to empower and support our teachers when it comes to strengthening STEM fundamentals education. We believe that this is important because the more equipped our STEM educators are, the more they can inspire our students to pursue a career in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. Through this program, we have been able to serve our teachers by creating STEM teaching modules as well as conducting teachers training webinars, all of which are accessible on our website for free. So we have also been able to collaborate with major educational organizations that have the same goals and advocacies as Filipino Science Hub. Through these partnerships, we have been able to further expand our reach and help more students and teachers, especially during the time of pandemic. So together, everybody achieves more. The other major program that drives our vision forward is PhilSci-Hub Research University. We believe that in order to strengthen a STEM culture, students also need to be able to learn how to conduct a scientific research. As we know, many scientific and technological breakthroughs happen through research, and we would like to equip our younger generation by providing them proper scientific research training. So ika nga po, start them young. Here at PhilSci-Hub Research University, we provide free courses on fundamentals of scientific research, such as research ideation, literature review, how to write a research proposal, how to communicate your research work to the scientific community, among other courses. Through this program, we are also able to bring practicing scientists closer to the STEM educational sector. So because of this closer contact, our students become more aware of the possible STEM career paths available for them and how these careers contribute to the advancement of the society around them. So up to date, we have been able to reach over 70,000 students and teachers all over the world, and we know that this will continue to grow in the years to come. And this is why we are all very excited on what is in store here at PhilSci-Hub. Our official website is www.philscihub.com. This is where you can access all our materials such as webinars, tutorials, modules, virtual lab, and special features. We are also present in several social media platforms such as Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, and TikTok. So follow us wherever you're most active on to get updated with our web events. So again, thank you for being with us this morning. And to officially start our webinar, I would like to turn the virtual floor over to our host for today. Good morning sa lahat. Welcome again to the Filipino Science Hub. So this morning we are very excited about this webinar because we have a special guest. It's Dr. Ted Novitsky of PPG Industries, one of the largest paint manufacturing companies in the world, and he will be talking about the science of protecting and beautifying the world with paints and coatings. So, bago po natin introduce ang ating speaker for this morning, we have a short announcement. So, we will be having a giveaway, actually 2 giveaways. So, if you are participating live, you have a chance to win an organic chemistry model kit. So, Dr. Ted will ask a couple of questions at the end of his talk, and whoever answers that question first will win the model kit. So you better listen to his talk this morning. So in order to win the organic chemistry model kit. So I would like to turn the virtual floor over to Dr. Jeff to introduce Mr. Ted. So Dr. Jeff.
All right. Okay, magandang umaga po sa inyong lahat sa Pilipinas. I am Jeffrey Pinkin and I am the founder of Filipino Science Hub. So thank you so much, Lindy. So we have a very special event today because we are actually graced by an international experts when it comes to oil and paints technology development. So, and it is my pleasure to introduce our speaker for today. So, we have Dr. Ted Novitsky. So, currently he is the technical manager for Architectural United States and Canada PPG Industries Incorporated. And so before that, he was a senior research chemist in the Coatings and Innovation Center, Analytical PPG Industries. In terms of his educational background, so Dr. Ted Novitsky took up his bachelor's degree in plastics engineering and technology from Pennsylvania State University. And then after, he took up his doctorate studies in polymers and high performance materials at the University of Southern Mississippi. So his research interests cover the areas of coatings, adhesives and sealants, polymers and analytical chemistry, as well as manufacturing. So Filipino teachers and students who are in the audience today, so we are actually very lucky to have Mr. Ted Novitsky as a speaker. So an internationally accomplished oil and paints expert. So Dr. Ted, welcome to Filipino Science Hub and take it away.
Hello. Well, first of all, thank you, Jeffrey and Dindy, for inviting me to give this presentation today. I'm really honored to be able to speak with a bunch of folks about something that I'm really passionate about, and that's science and how it relates to what I'm doing in my profession right now. So thank you.
Yep. And Ted, we actually have about 200 participants right now. It's like both from Zoom and YouTube. So.
Excellent, great. The more the merrier. Thanks everybody for joining. So again, the title of my talk this evening for me, is The Science of Protecting and Beautifying the World with Paints and Coatings. And really, I work for PPG, which is based in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania in the US. And our mission, our passion, what we do every day is surrounded by our idea of protecting and beautifying the world, right? So a brief summary. Let me see if I can get this off my screen. There we go. All right, a brief summary of my presentation. So first I'll start by giving a personal introduction about Jeffrey. If you have any advice for me to keep this from popping up on my screen.
So actually we're seeing your slides just fine, but are you having difficulty?
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But can you see your screen from your end quite well?
Okay, great.
Yeah. So it's we were seeing it like in presentation mode.
Okay, great. So we'll start with a personal introduction of myself and my background, and talk a little bit about how I got here today. I'll then talk about PPG and some very basic things about how we protect and beautify the world. Then we'll start to dig into the science with going through individual paint ingredients and talking about their function in relation to some very important scientific principles. And finally, I will talk a little bit about paint formulation, taking all those ingredients and putting them together to deliver differentiated products for our customers. So some of the key topics that I would just want to give a shout out to in the beginning here, that I would like everybody to understand at the end of this presentation and how it applies to coatings, is polymers, refractive index of materials, light scattering, soap in micelles, and rheology. So let's start with myself. So my background, I have a little timeline here of my background. So my first experience with science and the scientific method was in 7th grade, which was about 12 years old in age. And I had a great science teacher, and we had to come up with our own project that used the scientific method, which is basically ask a question, design experiments to obtain data on your question, and form results and hypothesis inclusions from that data. And so it's funny, my project was based on spray paint coatings, right? When I was 12, and now I'm 38 and I'm working in coatings again. But it was, I bought 4 different spray paints from a local store, and I painted some metal and soaked them in water. And I looked at how well they kept the metal from rusting. And so that really, was my first experience with learning how to question things, learning the scientific method, and that in my love of algebra in my primary school, I decided to go enter the STEM field in plastics engineering at Penn State. And plastics engineering is basically taking, one second, let me get my laser pointer, plastic materials and using machines such as extruders and injection motors to form them into plastic parts. And so during this time, I had a professor who was very much into chemistry and kind of on the side, taught me about the chemistry of plastics and polymers. And and after that mentorship, I started to take organic chemistry classes, and I decided that while I liked the engineering, I felt it was a little too prescribed. For instance, if we wanted to melt plastic and force it into a shape of a part, you have to increase the temperature to make the material, the liquid material, thinner. And so I really wanted to know why the molecules, caused that in that engineering situation, right? So I decided to take that and go to graduate school in polymer chemistry, where I joined the University of Southern Mississippi, one of the top schools in polymer chemistry. And under Lon Mathias, my advisor there, I was synthesizing a number of plastic materials in the area of polyamides, and was looking at block copolymers, homopolymers of unique monomers. And I'll explain more of this in detail as we go on. So after that, in my professional, I started my professional career at a startup company in Pittsburgh, PA called Nano Grip Tech. So another kind of theme of mine is all right, do something a little different, right? So I went to the startup company that was 4 people at the time, and there we were designing adhesives that mimicked geckos. So geckos can climb on walls, but yet at the same time, they don't have really sticky hands. And so we were designing materials that kind of mimic that. So after that, I joined PPG after that company. And so I went from a small company to a large company, and and I'll talk about this in the next slide, is building this personal toolbox. So I got to experience a large company, and I joined an analytical chemistry group doing very fundamental work on the analysis of paints and coatings. And from there, I joined the architectural coatings group, where I've started to lead a team in the formulation of new products. So that's my background. And really, I wanted to put this slide in here because it's, how did I get here, right? And it's a little source of inspiration, or some ways that I have found my success. One of many ways to be successful, and I feel like it comes up to wide range continuous learning, right? Hard work, and I've been working very hard, both professionally and personally, for a very long time, and a little bit of luck. And I love this at the top. I love this quote here: "Chance favors the prepared mind." So the more you learn, the more you work hard, the more diverse you educate yourselves in these areas, the more you can take advantage of the chance or luck that might come your way. And really, I want to talk to here is like, what's in your toolbox, right? So what's in your toolbox? So this is kind of my toolbox that has helped me through the way. In red, I have some technical things. So polymer chemistry, plastics engineering, we talked about. I joined an analytical department. Now I'm developing products that work with folks like Dindy in manufacturing. I've launched commercial products. And all of these have come kind of step changes in my career where I decided to do something different and take on something that I really haven't done before. So in blue, in leadership, in blue, I kind of put some leadership things, challenging myself on leading and managing people. And then, in mentoring and also being a mentee have really helped me learn and grow. So, and of course in green, I think that especially in current days, you can't separate our professional careers from our personal lives, and and I think that is extremely beneficial to make them work with each other. So in my personal time, I found there's a lot of things that I do that has helped me out professionally. So and I'll kind of lace these in and out of my conversation. I like to run. I like to exercise. I like to make soap, which is my passion for chemistry. I coach my 6-year-old daughter's soccer team, which teaches me to be humble. And I like to bake bread. I like to garden, and of course the parenting aspect. So all these things have kind of are in my toolbox now, waiting to be used as I proceed in my career. And so I think that's a good question to ask yourself. What's in your toolbox, right? And try to expand your toolbox, because you never know what you're going to learn and when you're going to learn it, and when that could be helpful for you, right? So, all right, let's move into a very simple question. So, what is a coating? So, a coating is a thin layer of covering that is applied to the surface of an object. So, a very simple definition that PPG makes a lot of money on, and creates a lot of jobs for people around the globe. And so this is a simple concept. So let's imagine that somebody makes a block of wood for one reason or another, or wood for some sort of construction, right? And so wood is a natural product. And being a natural product, after the plant dies, it's best for nature to degrade this natural product to be broken down from molecules to atoms to be reused by the plant to grow something new again. Well, and a lot of this time, this comes from water and the sun and degradation of the material. And so if you were making a house out of this, or a deck or a patio, you would see very quickly that your structure or your home, due to the sun and rain, would just crumble and fall apart, right? So really, what a coating does is if you take this block of wood and you apply a coating around the material, it will this thin layer of material, thin layer of covering around the bulk of the material. When sun and rain hit it, it will be protected, and it will last a lot longer. So all the investment that we put into building the structure, buying the raw materials, will last for a longer time with our coatings versus without. So here I provided a cross-section view that, if you cut this block in half, you could see that the bulk of the material is still wood, but we have a coating around it. So very simple, but I just wanted to make sure we keep this in mind to start the presentation off. So PPG is a coatings company. So just in our past example, we sell the coatings and we apply them to surfaces. to protect and beautify the world. So just take a minute and think about, I have three things here. I have food and beverage cans, I have an airplane and a car. So how are some ways that we can protect and beautify food and beverage cans? Take a second to think about it. So first of all, let's say soda, for instance, like Coke or Pepsi, it's a very acidic beverage. And being a very acidic beverage, it will etch and degrade the aluminum of the can. So really the coating is applied on the inside of the can to keep the metal from corroding. So also on the outside of the can, there are colors on the label for branding to tell you what type of product it is, what type of drink it is. Then on top of all those inks that create the design, there's a coating that makes it nice and shiny. We also provide coatings that whenever you coat your can on this, that it gives the can a feeling, a texture to it. This is in Monster energy drinks that are sold in the U.S. And probably the least known, and I'd be surprised if somebody thought of this, our coatings are actually designed to not extract the flavor of the beverage.
Nice.
So flavor, the flavor industry, our taste buds are very sensitive. Very low amounts of flavoring, or changes in that can cause the beverage to taste differently. So we actually designed them to not extract the flavor of the beverages. So we're protecting and beautifying in many ways. Moving along here, a plane. So again, planes are made out of aluminum. We and various materials, and they're made. A lot of those are metal for strength. And so again, it protects the plane from corrosion. We sell sealants that seal the plane and all around, all the fasteners and joints to keep the cabin pressurized, to allow the cabin to be pressurized, so there's no gas escape, and all on the interior of the wings is where the jet fuel is. And so we sell coatings that protect and seal the jet fuel from the rest of the plane. We also paint the outside of the plane to make the plane look good, and can so individual airline carriers can brand their planes. And we also and more technology based, we actually sell coatings that are IR transparent, so you can paint your plane a very dark color, and while it sits on the runway in the sun, it won't heat up like it's dark because the coating is IR transparent. All right. So finally, moving to cars, more about how we're protecting and beautifying. Again, cars are made out of a lot of mixed metals, aluminum, steel, even some plastics. We protect from corrosion. PPG also sells sound dampening materials for the inside of cars that keeps the metal panels from vibrating so much and makes your car and vehicle more quiet. We also paint and put coatings on signs that help the driver and protect the driver and pedestrians, and also road markings that are more visibly seen at night due to certain paint ingredients in there. And of course, ones that last for a very long time, so people don't have to keep repainting lines on roads. So finally, the coatings on the outside make the car look really good, in bright metallic colors that are very fade resistant. So these are just some of the ways that PPG protects and beautifies the world. And we're a global company. we have a bunch of different business units, anywhere from, we talked about aerospace, we talked about our automotive business unit. Also, when cars need to be repaired, when they have an accident, we sell refinishing paint. We have a protective and marines business unit that paints bridges and ships. We have an industrial coatings business unit that that provides paints for a lot of heavy duty equipment and different appliances. For instance, like a big tractor for farming, or even a washer and a dryer as an appliance. But today, I'm here to represent our architectural coatings business. And we sell paints and coatings for people's houses, interior and exterior, and everything in and around the outside of your house. So that's what we'll be talking about today. And our architectural business in the U.S. and Canada, we have our products and brands here. We have PPG branded material items. We also sell a lot of paint, a lot of stains and sealants for wood. I'm also a technical manager for our adhesives and sealants business. So whenever people build houses and they want to, not only fasten with nails and screws, but it also is more structurally sound. If you glue everything together, we sell these construction adhesives. And we also sell all kinds of other specialty materials through our Homex brand. So all these products, in my part of the company, we develop these products and formulas for these products. And folks like Dindy, who's a quality manager in one of our plants, she helps assist these products being manufactured and distributed to our customers in the field. And so we have PPG paint stores where we sell our own paint. We have what we call big box stores, which are big home improvement stores called the Home Depot and Lowe's and Menards that sell a lot of construction and equipment. Multi-purpose stores like Walmart, we also sell paint and adhesives too. And they then sell them to what we call our two main customers: professional painters that will take our products and work with the end customer to paint their structures, and do-it-yourselfers, which we call DIYers. And these are folks like myself. I'm a huge DIYer, so I use a lot of the own products that we make, and actually working on their homes themselves and doing the jobs themselves. So this is the business unit that I'm representing. And so what I will talk about is mainly the paint formulations that we use in our business unit for paints and coatings. And that takes me to the part of my talk called understanding paint ingredients. And so what we'll do is we'll go through the science behind the different categories of paint ingredients one by one. So this is an overview of generally the categories of types of materials in paint. First, we have either solvent or water, and this is one of the largest ingredients, and it is a carrier fluid. And it is kind of the vehicle for all the other materials to be able to be applied in a liquid form, right? So 70 years ago, a lot of paints were solvent-based. And solvent-based means they use something like mineral spirits or xylenes, aromatic solvents, to dissolve all the materials and disperse all the materials and to create the liquid and applies to and then you would take this liquid and apply it. But this has shifted from solvent-based materials to pretty much all water-based materials, because water coming off, evaporating and coming off the film is so much better for the folks applying the paint, especially indoors where there could be low ventilation. It's better for the environment, and it's more safe because now you're not dealing with flammable materials. We're dealing with water-based materials. So my talk will generally focus on water-based materials, which are most of what we sell. Next, the next kind of most important ingredient is what we call the binder or the resin. And these are the polymers that basically glue all the paint ingredients to themselves, and to the substrate. And this binder resin is generally hydrophobic, or it does not like water, and it keeps the water out of your substrate. Next, we have additives, which are the low-level ingredients that have very specific purposes. For instance, to thicken the paint, or to disperse all the ingredients in the paint, make it stable in water. And then finally, we have pigments and additives, and these provide color, gloss, and hiding properties. So we'll go through these one by one and hopefully explain and some of the scientific principles here. So as we step through the ingredients, I'm going to throw up a slide that shows this mental picture, right? And as we add ingredients, we're going to add the ingredient to this mental picture, because it always helps me to understand something visually. And so when I think of paint and coatings, I'm always wondering what it looks like to kind of be a molecule within the paint. What are we looking at, right? So first, I said we're starting out with water-based materials. So here we have the wet paint. We just have water so far. It's the carrier fluid. And so say we put water in a substrate, and then we let the water dry. And we're doing this on a piece of wood. And of course, all the water goes away and we have no film. This isn't a coating, but I just wanted for us to start getting that visual picture of what's going on. So the first ingredient we'll start off with is a polymer, is the resin, which is based off polymers. And being a polymer chemist, I have to say this is my favorite. So I think I could give a whole talk just on polymers and resins. So I tried to sum everything up in 2 slides. Maybe at a later date we could have a conversation just on polymers, but
Definitely.
we'll be brief for now. So a polymer is very simply a long chains of atoms or molecules, and I kind of drew this here. And some simple ways to go about it. First, imagine we have a molecule called M, and we perform some chemical reactions to chemically or covalently link a bunch of M's together. And basically, we were taking what we called a mer and putting many of them together to get something called a polymer. It's that simple. So to give an example, which I think Jeffrey, maybe you're very familiar with, one of the very the simplest polymers is polyethylene, and it starts with ethylene, and through a process called free radical polymerization, we link all these ethylenes together to make polyethylene. And this is one of the biggest consumer plastics out there. And so we have this long string of ethylenes together to make polyethylene. And the way I like to visually put this is, and a lot of the way I've been taught polymers from the beginning, is to think at a bowl of noodles, right? On a molecular scale, if you were to be one of these molecules down there, you would witness something like a bowl of noodles. So again, this red line is a monomer that we reacted to make this polymer, and this polymer is now one of these individual noodles laying in this bowl of pasta. And if you think about being one of those noodles, if you were a polymer, you would first notice that you were very entangled with all the other noodles in the bowl, and it'd be hard for you to move around. And it's these interactions, which we call van der Waals interactions. They're just weak forces that give the polymer or plastic structure and make them solids, right? And there's so many of them, and because there's so much contact area between all these molecules, these noodles, and a bowl of pasta. So this is a very simplified version. If we have questions at the end, I could talk about more complicated polymers here. But if you want to go, my advisor, Lon Mathias at the University of Southern Mississippi, he created a website called the Macro Galleria. He's very passionate about teaching polymers. I provided the link here. It's really good. There's tons of information here to learn about polymers. And so to me, I think polymers are very interesting because depending on, let's say, the chemicals that I make the polymer out of, depending on how long I make the polymers, or whether they're branched, or they look like stars, or you could even have, like, a different chemistry that's half the molecule and then another chemistry for the other half. You could make a wide range of polymers that have extremely different properties. And this is the really fun thing, right? We can make something as hard as a bowling ball, right? That's essentially a bowling ball is essentially one huge molecule that's crossing together, right? We can make them very soft and very gooey based on what we make the polymers out of. We could make them a powder that you can dissolve in water. We could also make, in the case of coatings, a powder that keeps water out of your substrate, keeps the water out of your wood. So we have synthetic polymers that make up a lot of our plastics and a wide variety of materials, but there are natural polymers that, for instance, the spider silk is a natural polymer that a spider pretty much creates on demand for a specific property. It's also used something as simple as a plastic cup, like this one, but it also could be as technically complicated as a liquid polymer for a dental filling, that when you shine UV light on it, it cures and is as hard as a rock. So to me, this is why polymers are so cool. And I'm really passionate about this subject. So let's bring it back to paint. So if we have these polymers that are really good at keeping water out of the substrate, how are they in water in the first place, right? So what we do is there are a variety of processes here that we take these noodles, right? And we use water and soap to disperse them in water. And we'll get to the water and soap here in a second, because this is important. But we actually take the polymers and disperse them in water to make little particles of polymers that are floating around in water. And typically for architectural, they're around 150 to anywhere from 50 to 200 nanometers, which is pretty small. And here's a picture of these materials through a TEM here and SEM here that shows that we're not too far from, I mean, while this is just a picture that I drew in PowerPoint, this is actually what they look like, right? And so we need this resin to be dispersed in water. And then after the water is gone, we need it to form a nice film. And so this is what we call coalescence in the paint and coatings world. So we have these these polymers that are dispersed in water, and as the water evaporates, they start to concentrate, and the particles start to touch each other. And then when the water is gone, the particles merge together and they coalesce. And it's through this coalescence that gives the film its strength, its mechanical properties, its strength, its ability to be flexible and elongate and not crack and break. And that's what we call coalescence. And that's what really drives the behavior of water-based paints. I love this area. This is something I think about every day. So, so the mental picture. So now we have our resin. That is the binder. It binds all the ingredients together. If we made a paint, and this is all we had in there, and the water goes away, we'd have a film. And this film, I hope you can still see me. I don't know. This film is basically like saran wrap, something you would find in the kitchen to preserve goods. It's clear. All the polymers are joined together to make a clear, very tough film. It's very much like saran wrap, right? So most of the coatings that we sell in architectural aren't clear. Ideally, when people want to use some of our products, they want to change the color of their room. They want to hide stains or cracks in the wall. So we need to add some things in there that I'm going to use the term hiding a lot. And the term hiding means we're basically hiding we want to put a new color on and we want to hide what's behind it, right? And so this is where the next ingredient comes in, is pigments. And so I'll go through some fundamentals on color and hiding. And there's this book called The Application of Light Scattering to Coatings. I absolutely love this book. And I actually grabbed a lot of the figures in these next two slides from this book. So in order to hide the color on your wall or the stain on your wall, there's really two ways to go about that. And it's absorption and scattering of light. And so there's kind of three things that we have to keep in mind here when we think about hiding in pigments, right? So we have the light source, we have the substrate that is interacting with the light, and then we have the detector, in this case, which is our eyes. We're detecting the light that's either that's occurring at this wall, and through absorption, we get hiding because the pigments in the paint absorb the light. They absorb the light. So black absorbs all the wavelengths of light. So light is made out of multiple wavelengths, and black looks black because it absorbs all of them, and nothing gets back to your eye. Therefore, nothing underneath it. You can't see anything underneath it either, because it's absorbing everything. And so this is how we get color in paints. So we have different pigments or different chemicals that absorb very specific wavelengths of light and change what gets back to your eye. The other method which is important to paint is scattering. So light scattering. So light scattering is, so you have the light coming from a source, it's hitting a substrate, and it's getting scattered and coming back, and it's coming back to your eye. And since this is scattered and it's not specific to any wavelengths, it looks white. And it just so happens in architectural and a lot of other business units, white is the most popular color. So a lot of our paints are white, and we think a lot about scattering. And which I'll explain on the next slide, that TiO2, titanium dioxide, is pretty much which makes a lot of the things that we see that are white. It's very important to our paints and coatings and our business, and it's a very high in demand material. So this slide explains why titanium dioxide is so important to us. So it has to do with the refractive index. And so refractive index is the degree that the materials will change the speed and the direction of light. So if you have a homogeneous material and it will be passing through it, it only changes that speed and direction once. And so I love this picture at the bottom here. So here we have two examples of glass at the same thickness. And when we have a homogeneous glass material, this is one thick piece of glass, we could see the black line at the bottom. We could see the white and how it's differentiated from the black. But yet, if we stack little microscope slides on top of one another at the same thickness, we could no longer see the line. Take a second to think about why. Or maybe you could read down here. So there is, in between each slide, even though from our macroscopic view, from our large view, it looks like the pieces of glass are intimately touching. But in reality, they're not. There's a little layer of air between every glass slide. And so the light, think about the light now. It passes through one glass slide. It has a certain refractive index, so its speed changes, its direction changes, then it hits air. And then its speed changes, its direction changes, it hits glass. Its speed changes, its direction changes, and so the light just gets scattered everywhere. This is why you can't really see the line here. And this is due to materials being inhomogeneous. And so TiO2 by itself, doesn't inherently scatter light until it's really well, until it's in something. And so when we talk about hiding power, we'll show these graphs here. We'll move to this graph. And you see a bunch of lines that are black and white. And when I say hiding, when something is good hiding, it is your inability to pick out black from white. That's a good hiding paint right here. And so what this graph is showing is 8 different paints with different amounts of inorganic materials in here. So we have calcium carbonate, we have zinc oxide, we have titanium calciate, titanium calcium, and they're in the same. They have the same particle size, and they have the same amounts of materials in there. And you see that the titanium dioxide is very white. It has a really good hiding compared to the same amount of calcium carbonate, which you could barely even tell that it's there. And the main reason is because it's inhomogeneous, like this example here, and it's about the difference between the refractive index of the polymer and the refractive index of the titanium dioxide. So the more different they are, the more that light is bouncing in and out and at different angles, and it just makes for good scattering, which we know that scattering makes something white. So this is why titanium dioxide is so important to paints, along with the fact that people just really like light colors. So remember, titanium dioxide. So going back to the mental picture, right? So now to our wet paint, we have titanium dioxide And it's generally 250 nanometers. The resin's around 100, 150 nanometers. And so just to put that into perspective, our hair, the diameter of our hair is 50 microns, which is like an order of magnitude, like 10 times bigger than what we're seeing here, right? So if I were to like put a hair on here, it'd be the size of it'd be bigger than the size of the screen, right? So when the water goes, we now have a nice white film with titanium dioxide dispersed in resin, right? All right, so next, fillers and matting agents. So I promise to move a little fast here because I have a good bit to go through still. So fillers and matting agents is some of our customers like shiny paint, which is high gloss paint, and some of them like very dull flat paint. And so, the high gloss paint is typically where you want a little more durability. It has high resin. And when you zoom in on the surface, it'll look smooth to us, but on a micron scale, it'll still look very smooth. But in the flat or matte paints, if you were to zoom this in on a micron scale, you would see that the surface is very rough. And that roughness makes the light bounce off the surface in every which direction. And it doesn't appear shiny. It's nice and flat and matte. So this is important to us in paints because people have a preference for high gloss all the way to flat sheens. And we do this by adding fillers and matting agents. And I have some pictures here, microscope pictures here of different matting agents we use. Calcium carbonates, silicas. A lot of these are stuff that's mined from the ground and ground up to a very fine particle size. Talc, pumice, diatomaceous earth, which is an interesting one that is actually formed by diatoms, little creatures and microscopic creatures in the ocean, and things like clays. And we add these in here, like I said, to just make a rough surface so we could change the gloss of our paints. And so matting agents are pretty big compared to everything else. And so I have them here. They're much bigger than the titanium dioxide. And when the water goes, they kind of stick out at the surface. And again, the amount that they stick out of the surface will dictate how shiny or how dull the film is. One last category is additives. And the first type of additives we'll talk about is thickeners and rheology modifiers. So first of all, what is rheology? And rheology is the study of flow of matter. So it's how things flow. I love this picture over here to the left. You see that we have a kind of a metal mesh, and we have a solid material on here. And then they place silly putty, which is kind of a soft, solid material. And once you set it on this mesh, at first it looks like it's a solid material. But over time, this material, I would say over the matter of hours, this material actually will flow and deform through the metal mesh, and this is dictated by its rheology. The materials that are made of and how they flow. And so the two main types of materials of how things flow, the two categories are Newtonian versus non-Newtonian. So when we talk about rheology here, we talk about viscosity, right? And this is how thick something is, right? And I'm going to show, and on this other axis, on the y-axis here, we talk about shear rate or shear stress. And this is basically how much force I'm putting on a fluid. And so an example of a Newtonian fluid is something that the viscosity does not change no matter how much you mix it, right? So I have a bottle here. No matter how much I shake this material, its viscosity is not changing. It's staying the same. So I increase the stress, I'm over here, viscosity isn't changing. Honey is thicker. It has a higher viscosity. But again, no matter how much I try to get this honey out and put energy in to the fluid, it doesn't make it flow any better. It's still really hard to get out. So just because something is thicker, you could have thick Newtonian fluids and thin Newtonian fluids. Now, paint is generally a non-Newtonian fluid. Now, all of a sudden, it's not. Okay, there we go. And so it's a little different. So at rest, when it's just sitting there or resting, or it's being mixed very lightly, it's pretty thick. But as I shear it, as I mix it around, the viscosity decreases and it gets thinner. So you could see that as I increase the shear rate or shear stress, it gets thinner. And so you can think of something like, my example here is to represent Pittsburgh, we have Heinz ketchup, right? So this material, it doesn't cut, it a little bit comes out of the jar just because of the gravity forcing on it. But if I press it just a little bit, it comes out a lot. It's actually thinning as I press it, and it comes straight out of the container. So this is a thick strathic fluid, and it's shear thinning. We also have, albeit very rare, and a very simple example, and you should all try this at home, is you can get the right mixture of cornstarch and water, and you could actually see the opposite effect, where as you increase the shear rate or of this, it actually becomes a solid the harder you hit it. It's a pretty cool demonstration. But when you just touch it very lightly, you can sink your finger into it. But if you were to poke it down in real hard, it builds a structure and it gets really thick. So why is this important in paint? It's important in paint because all throughout the customer's experience with paint, it has different shear rates are applied to it. And I just told you that paint is shear thinning. And so if we have different shear rates, it's going to be different viscosities. So when the paint's sitting in the can and it has a low shear rate, just the forces of gravity, it's rather thick. And that's a good thing because we don't want all the particles to separate and collect at the bottom of the can. Customers don't like remixing things. At the same time, whenever they open the can and they start to stir it just a little bit, we're increasing the shear rate or the shear stress, and it's starting to thin. And our customers think that thick paints, very viscous paints, are good. It's almost like they have more stuff in them. It's not really necessarily the case. We could just put more thickeners and make it feel thick, right? But nonetheless, they shear it, it's going to thin out. It still needs to be pretty thick for the customer perception of the product. And so then they pour this, they shear it more, pour it into the paint tray. We use rollers and brushes to apply it to a wall. And with application, we're shearing it a lot. We're seeing a lot of shear, and it's getting even thinner. If it gets too thin, it could start to do something we call sagging, and the paint will just fall off the wall. And then, of course, you don't want your paint looking like this. This will look like a bad paint job, right? So we have to balance all these. So we don't want it to sag, but we also don't want it to be thick like this, to where you take your roller over it and you have this crazy texture on the wall. You want it to be smooth. So these thickeners in our paint and how they associate with all the other ingredients I just talked about really we really have to be careful how this material flows, which is the rheology, right? Promise I'm going to be moving along here, Jeffrey.
You're good. You're good.
Okay. So the next thing is additives, right? The next additive is surfactants, which is the fancy chemistry name for soap. And so, just kind of think here, how does soap clean your hands, right? This person here looks like a lot of dirt, which is inorganic materials. Water doesn't dissolve a lot of these materials, but soap helps it be removed from your hands. And so this is kind of a fun thing to think about. So soap or surfactants actually are a molecule that has a portion of the molecule really loves water. It really wants to be dissolved in water, right? And we have another portion of the molecule that is what we call hydrophobic. It hates water, doesn't want to have anything to do with water. So these molecules are like, they have different preferences. And when we put them in water, they form these vehicles called micelles, with the water-loving portion pointing towards the water, and of course the portion that hates water pointing on the inside. And so how soap works is these molecules, like soap doesn't work by itself. You always need water with soap. And what it does is these micelles, or these surfactant molecules, will coat all of the dirt particles on your hand. They'll coat the dirt particles on your hand, and then it will essentially suspend that dirt particle in water, and it falls off the water down into the drain, right? And so, again, how does this relate to paint? Well, we have this water-based paint. We have a bunch of things that aren't soluble in paint, but need to be dispersed in paint. So if we made a paint that didn't have this soap or surfactant in it, all these particles, this TiO2, these extenders that I talked about to get matting, the resins themselves, they would just collect at the bottom. They wouldn't disperse. They wouldn't be dispersed because they don't want to be in water. So we add surfactant. The surfactant coats all the particles and allows them to be suspended in the water. Very important ingredient, low level, couple percent, but very important nonetheless. So finally, the last additive, which is important and kind of unique, that's why I wanted to talk about it, is biocides and mildewcides. And really, can paint spoil, right? And the answer is yes, it most definitely can. So we have a water-based material, a paint that's mainly water, and we all know that living things love water. So our paints with all the bacteria and all the mold and fungi in the air will gladly live in this water. And since they need organic materials for food that we have all dispersed in our paint with surfactant, they'll gladly eat all these materials and spoil the paint. And you'll get paint that really stinks. So we have to use in-can preservatives, such as biocides, to make sure these things don't grow in there before the paint is applied. And also we add mildewcides for exterior products. So mold and mildew won't grow and eat the paint film when it's dried, right? Because they'll gladly do that too. So nature has its way. So here's back to the mental picture, right? So here we have all these green additives. Some of them are dispersed in water. Some of them are dissolved in water. The surfactants are coating everything. And when the film dries, they remain in the film. They're not volatile. They remain in the film. So finally, to finish up on paint ingredients, we've talked about this mental picture, and I just wanted to say, like, let's see some real pictures, right? Because one thing for me to just put some clip art there, but it's another thing to just see it. And here I've included some electron microscope images of paint. And these are very simple paints. They are gloss material, so it's mainly resin, additives, and TiO2. And first we looked at it through scanning electron microscopes. And in this case, electrons are being bounced off the surface. And so the things that are light are things that are not absorbing electrons and reflecting them. So this is the TiO2. So you can actually see we have a bunch of TiO2 particles kind of dispersed in an organic resin matrix. And the things that we look for here is how well dispersed the TiO2 is in this image, right? And we have ways to do that. So looking at here, we have an image of a transmission electron microscope. And so we take a really thin slice of film and we're passing electrons through it. So the inorganic materials won't let electrons pass through. So here, the TiO2 is very dark. Light in scanning, the TiO2 is dark in transmission. And you can see that these are kind of embedded in a polymer matrix. You could even see some of the polymers, some of the other ingredients are providing some sort of weird circular structures. You see some other things kind of in here. And so we like to look at these images to so we can better perfect the mental view of our coatings, because it's the mental view that really give us ideas, right? It gives us ideas. It allows us to ask those questions. So I talked about all the ingredients, and I'm just going to take in some principles, and I'm just going to take a few minutes. Looks like I've been talking for about an hour now. So I was going to take a few minutes to...
You're good. It's okay.
What?
You're good.
Okay. To talk about what this all means, for putting it all together to deliver differentiated products. And this is the science. This is the fun stuff we do. And I presented this slide to a bunch of high school students recently to talk about what it's like to work in a research and development lab. And, as I got to thinking, I like to bake bread. And so I got to thinking, I'm like, well, making paint is not too much different from baking maybe a cake or making bread, right? And so I'd just like to take a minute to kind of relate these things and talk about formulation sciences and what we do in the lab, right? So when you're baking a cake, you take dry ingredients and you have your wet ingredients. And it's kind of funny whenever you're looking at cake recipes, they call eggs the binder, which is what we call the resin in our paint. So there's even similar names, right? So the eggs are the binder. And so then we take the dry ingredients and we take the wet ingredients and we mix them together using, let's say, some sort of mixer. And then we take the material and take a spatula and put it into a tin to bake into an oven. And then you taste it after it's done. And so you can sit there and say, oh, well, it's not as, it's too dry. It's not as moist as I would like it to be. Or it's not sweet enough. Needs more sugar. Or I forgot to put the salt in, right? So then you would taste it and then go back and start again. and do the process over again until you made a really good cake, or loaf of bread in my case. So paint formulation and my team, adhesive formulation, is not too much different. All the ingredients that I just talked about, there are probably about thousands of options to choose from. Like literally thousands of different paint ingredients that we choose from. And so this is what we do. We put the pigments, and we put resins. We put defoamers and surfactants. We use mixing stands that look more scientific, but are basically the kitchen things that you would see in your kitchen. We'll take the liquid paint, draw them down, stick them in an oven, and then test them. We won't eat them in this case. We'll test them. We'll look at application behavior. We'll look at physical properties, and I'll talk about some of the things we test for and design for. And we have ways of doing design of experiments, which allow us to look at many different paint ingredients, altered in a very systematic fashion, to look at how do I pick the best paint? What ingredient do I want to choose? What's my formulation? So these are examples of some of the tests we run. So for exterior paints, it's UV resistance and fading. So we actually will then coat panels with a bunch of different formulas and put them on what we call a panel farm. And here's an example of a panel farm. And you just put your paint out there and let it sit for anywhere from a year to, in the case of our automotive coatings, it could be 5 years. And we actually look for cracking. Does the film crack? Does it peel off? Does the color go from dark blue to light blue? And then we'll use this to get at what is the best formulation, and use scientific principles to fundamentally understand why that happens. That's the fun part. It's what makes me excited to go to work every day, right? Another example is adhesion. So we scratch the paint all the way down to the substrate. We put a piece of tape on there and try to pull off the paint. And in this case, you try to view how much paint actually stuck to the panel. And for obvious reasons, we want our paint to stick very well to the substrates. So one other test just to mention, stain resistance and washability. So what we'll do is we have a bunch of different stain materials. We have lipstick, we have coffee, we have wine, we have green crayon. This is an interesting one, right? Is there anybody that has had kids? I mean, especially for myself, the kids decide to use the walls as their canvas, right? And so we have green crayon to see if we could take that off. We have pencil, we have marker in some cases. So we apply these stains to here, and we measure, we then clean them off in a very systematic fashion. And we take color readings at each spot. And we determine what paint was more stain resistant and washable. And we relate that back to the ingredients in the paint, everything we just mentioned. Finally, application properties. So not only the final performance of the paint, but how easily it applies to the wall. We talked about hiding already. If you look at this image and you distinguish how well you could see the black from the white, so like focus on this line right here, you could see that with this paint, it doesn't hide as well as this paint, right? And this is important because we don't want our customers to put 4 coats of paint on the wall. That's just more time, right? So I'll kind of skip over some of this. Flow and leveling we talked about a little bit. We want really smooth surface versus something that's textured. Sagging, I have a good and a bad sagging rating, and that's this dripping that if you put too much paint on the wall, that paint could start to flow down the wall, and it could give a really bad appearance. And so what we do between final performance and application properties is we try to balance all these, and it gets really complicated. You fix one problem, you create another problem. And it's this big balancing act of properties, and how this relates to the formula is what we do every day. So this is an example of one of the products that we just launched called Ultralast last year in the US. And it's the most washable paint on the market. And we went through all these iterations and all this chemistry to make this formula that, when you compare it to our competitors, washing after exposure to all these things, our paint will wash off these stains very easily. And when you could wash off the stains very easily, you don't have to repaint, and that's very valuable to our customers. So that's one example. And finally, a couple. I have two more slides. And we have all different kinds of products we make. So we do all this formulation for interior and exterior wall paints. We have primers, which are made to have really good adhesion and take a dark color away before you put your color paint on. We have specialty paints that are like for trim, cabinets, and doors. And some of the things that we test for is like skin oil resistance, right? So if I touch this paint, if it's on a cabinet and my hand is touching it time and time again, like how well will it absorb or resist the oils of our skin, right? And then with all of our other products, we generally have tiers, because certain customers, they want to pay more money to have it last longer. Other customers just want something that gives that nice repainted look on the wall, but maybe won't last too long. So we have a lot of complexity in different types of paints, and then different quality of paints. So one final thing that I would like to mention is the main reason why people paint something is because they want to change the color. I haven't really mentioned that too much yet. So I wanted to talk about this a little bit. So every single base paint product we have, the customer comes to the store and they can choose what sheen they want. And this is how, and we talked about this earlier, how shiny the paint is. And they can choose the color. And so in order to provide an optimized formula to capture this space, we can have up to 16 different, what we call bases, that color could be added to give the customer what they want. So for instance, if I wanted something that is very shiny and black, just straight black paint, right? I would use what we call a neutral color, because it has very little TiO2 in it, which means it's not scattering, it's less white. And it would minimize the use of how much black I would need to put in that can. And of course, it would be semi-gloss, so it would be very shiny, right? If I wanted a white color and have it be flat or matte, not shiny, I would choose what we call pastel, which has the most amount of TiO2, which scatters the most and is the most white. And it has a high filler loading or matting agent loading. I would choose this base and that color. And so we have a whole team in our R&D that is just, they make color formulas. And so we have 4 different sheens and a choice of about 2,000 colors. So they have to make 8,000 color matches. So when the customer picks that color at the store employee could choose one of these bases, put it under the machine, and it will dispense the right colorant amount. we have to design for this with our formulation, which goes back to all the raw materials and fundamentals that we talked about. So that's the end. An hour and 13 minutes.
Yeah, you're all good, Ted. Thank you so
All
much.
right.
That was a highly engaging and a fairly comprehensive talk. So, I have to say I learned a lot about things.
Good. I'm glad.
After this one. So, and then, I thank you for also infusing touches of, like basic science concepts in there.
Yeah.
I think that aspect really makes this talk, a democratization of paints and coatings, right? Because
Yeah.
like you infused it with concepts that even high school students would appreciate. So, but before we move on to the question and answer section, we'd give you, like a couple of minutes of break. So we'll just go through a couple of advertisements, essentially like upcoming events, just so you can rest your voice. And then
All
after
right.
that, we'll move on to the question and answer period. So
Excellent.
take a couple of sips of water, and then I'll take over for just like a couple of slides.
Will do.
Thank you. All right. So para po sa ating audience, so before we move on to the question and answer period, I would like to just go over some of our upcoming events. So next week po, October 23rd, at 10 in the morning in Manila. So this is a Saturday. So we will have our very first math special topic. So we will be featuring Dr. Neil Egargin, an assistant professor in mathematics at the Institute of Mathematical Sciences and Physics, Mathematical Sciences and Physics from the University of the Philippines in Los Baños. And he'll talk about maths in action, so as applied in controlling sound and electromagnetic waves. So tune in po. So that's exciting. And then we still have our collaboration webinar series with De La Salle University Central Instrumentation Facility. So this is a webinar series featuring modern analytical methods. So September, so a month ago, we had Mr. Chris Argamina talking about atomic and molecular spectroscopy for environmental research. Last week, we had Dr. Jose Esmira. He discussed fundamentals of scanning electron microscopy, a technique that Ted showcased earlier as well. And then on November 27th, we'll have Dr. Virgilio Ibajo, and he'll talk about nuclear magnetic resonance spectroscopy for natural products research. December 4th, we'll have Mr. Michael Arnante, and we'll talk about multi-species cytogenetic analysis. And then last but not the least, on January 15th of 2022, Dr. Anna Karen Lacerna will talk about liquid chromatography, instrumentation, and applications in natural products research. So all of these webinars are actually for free po. So hindi nyo kailangan magbayad dyan. So all you have to do is, register to those events by visiting our official website, www.philsahab.com, and also our official Facebook page. So all the registration information are uploaded there. And then, okay, so for the rest of October, so after Mr. Gargin on the 23rd, we'll cap the month with the duo of Dr. Annalette Carrasco, who's based in the US, and also Mr. JP Onya, who's the Vice President of PhilSci-Hub and Head of PhilSci-Hub Research University. The two of them will talk about the fundamentals of research, specifically kung paano po on how to teach research at the high school and elementary level. And so this particular teaching webinar is part of the tripartite collaboration, which involved the Foundation for the Upgrading of the Standard of Education. So it's the academic foundation under the Lushutan Group of Companies, and then Philippine Normal University and Filipino Science Hub. So in this particular training program for STEM teachers, we bring you 4 training courses on the essentials of pedagogy and some of the skills and best practices that our teachers should have while teaching STEM in the new normal. And then we also balance that out by 4 courses created by Filipino scientists on on the practical and innovative ways of teaching STEM. So that's that the combination of those 2 sets of training courses is comprises the paradigm shift that we're trying to really push forward in the Philippines. So we're really trying to modernize our ways of teaching STEM, and also hopefully the result of that would be more agile STEM teachers. So those teachers who are very adaptive to changing learning environments. Yan po. Okay, so those are events. So again, to register, just go to our website and our official Facebook page. So now we're joined by Mr. JP Ona, the Vice President of Filipino Science Hub and Head of PhilSci-Hub Research University. So
Hi guys.
yeah, welcome JP. We'll now move on to our question period. So perhaps like then the 3 of us can actually take turns in throwing these questions over to Ted. So perhaps we can I can start with this one. So Ted, I think you captured people's interest earlier when you mentioned about when you passionately discussed polymers. So there's this question from Zoom and it says, could you provide more examples of naturally occurring polymers?
Yeah. So so first of all, wood is basically made out of cellulose, which is nature has a way of taking sugars and basically polymerizing a bunch of different sugars together. And, depending on the 3D structure, can give you hardwood, softwood, and a lot of different kinds of cellulose. So it give you, all kinds of plant fibers, things like this. Most structural things that you see in nature are some sort of polymer. Yeah, some sort of polymer. Spider silk too, I mentioned, is probably one of the most fascinating, right? So.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks, Ed. Dindi, JP.
Okay. From Zoom. Okay, so this is a question about resin. So the question is, why are some resins irreversible to their monomer or raw material state?
Yeah.
So, okay, I guess, yeah, you can answer that question first.
Yeah, so some polymers and how the chemistry that links them together makes them be easily reversible. So for instance, the one that comes to mind is polyesters that are made out of the condensation of an acid and an alcohol to remove water and create an ester bond. The reaction can easily go backwards. In the presence of water, could hydrolyze the acid and the alcohol to create the monomers again. So that's just kind of the nature of some polymers and the bonds that they're made out of. But you look at the example that I gave, polyethylene. It's not easy to go backwards on this reaction. You need a lot of energy because that is a very stable system. So good answer. There's a lot of talk, about how to recycle and reuse polymers, not only to just melt them down and create something different, but also how to reuse and make new chemicals out of them, right? So.
All right, and so a follow-up question to that. So if there are plant-based resins, why are some industries not using these as raw materials for their products?
Yep, so this is an interesting question. And some of the oldest known paints are that even goes back to the Egyptians, is using vegetable oils as resins. So vegetable oils, such as like a canola oil or a coconut oil or olive oil, they can actually oxidatively cross-link to create a polymer that is 100% 100% natural, but they're not very durable.
Mm-hmm.
They're not very durable, and they won't last very long. And you know, there are stuff that we're getting more and more advanced in creating resins from plants, but nothing is quite there yet that meets the performance and the cost
Mm-hmm.
just yet. For instance, we would basically have to have customers that are willing to pay more money for a worse performing product, and that's not a good business model, right? And you know, you could sit and think, you know, in paints, going back to my first slide, you know, and thinking in the green area, if that's where this is coming from, and environmentally, you know, if paints aren't being made from plants, that's one thing, but they're making, you know, all the metals and all the energy that we took to make this infrastructure, it makes them last a lot longer, right? Which is a bigger play than whether the paint is you know, plant-based or not. So it's a good question. We need to think more about the area of plant-based materials and green chemistry in consumer products. So,
All right, JP, you want to
Right.
take the next question?
Okay, so we have a question now from YouTube from Miss Evelyn Kayukom. Well, we have a lot of participants on YouTube. I think STI Cubao has a lot of students tuning in, and this is a question from Evelyn.
Let's qualify STI, Systems Technology Institute. So it's a university.
Yep. So, watching from the Philippines, are your paints recyclable or part of a circular economy? Well, speaking about being environment friendly.
yep, another good question. Our paints, it depends on at what point you get them. If you have the paint already applied to a wall, that cannot be reclaimed and be recycled, right? But there are companies that we work with that take paints that are still liquid and remix them and reblend them to be sold to other customers.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah. So I guess that's a fairly interesting point that you raised right there, right? You know, once the paint is applied, how do you actually recycle it? Right?
Yeah.
If you scrub it off, it actually comes with, you know, non-paint type, non-paint material. So yeah.
Yep.
That's something that, you know, I don't think has ever crossed my mind. So.
But again, I think this is something where we all industries have to get better. Yep.
All right. So okay, I'll read this one. So this is a Zoom question from Edric Lawrence Sulit. So I guess he has a couple of questions. So the first one about titanium dioxide. So if they stack even more, I think he's talking about the examples that he showed about like refraction and
Yep.
whatnot. So if they stack even more, does the object from below expand or bend from our perspective through light refraction?
You know, if you stack more.
So I guess like he might be asking if you have like more layers of titanium dioxide.
Well, yeah. So generally, I mean, it's important to. I don't think you would see. You would not see a disturbed image of what was on the bottom. You would just see it or not see it. And generally, we want the TiO2, and I didn't address this, and talk about efficiency, right? Yeah. So we want the TiO2 to be completely dispersed in the resin. Okay. Anytime TiO2 touches TiO2, it's less efficient in its ability to scatter light. So we really want to be completely dispersed on a particle level in the resin, right? Okay. So
So this is getting into like a more hardcore, formulation science. Yep. Right? Okay. So I guess that also already addresses the follow-up question. So I guess we can move on to the next one.
Yep. If those graphs interest you, that book is really nice.
Okay.
That book is really nice. So that I have reference there.
Okay. Thank you. So our next question again is from Zoom participant Marlo Fabia. So his question is, what are applicable test indicators that paint has titanium dioxide? So I guess, how do we analyze TiO2?
Well, if your paint is light colored and it's white, it has TiO2 in it. Like there's no, and it has, some kind of decent hiding potential. It is very, very highly probable that there's TiO2 in it to some degree. If you wanted to test for it, I'd say the easiest way is to do an FTIR.
Mm-hmm.
Right? If you wanted to get down to something more quantitative, you would probably do something like some sort of elemental spectroscopy, right? Yep. So, but if it's white, it's most likely TiO2. Yeah.
All right.
Mm-hmm. Question from Andrew Donio. Is there a possibility that paint becomes dilatant, or there's a shear thickening?
I think that the ratio of ingredients that are in paints is probably not very likely. If you get to the point where you have a lot of filler in the material, like a lot of filler to the point where it wouldn't make a good paint, you might get dilatancy, which is basically building a structure with increased shear, but I doubt it that it would happen with paint. A lot of the times we see this when we're manufacturing paint. Sometimes when we're taking all these powders and putting them into water, and we have high concentration of inorganics, they can be dilating. I'm sure, Dindy, you might occur this in manufacturing sometimes. So, yep.
All right. So
good questions.
Yeah. All right. And then, okay, so perhaps we can actually ask our Zoom participants, like if there's anyone within the audience who's interested in asking their questions live, let us know. Just raise your virtual hand and we'll actually give you the floor. All right. Okay, so this is a question from Eileen Beroya. Her question says, how can you make paint less toxic and odorless?
Well, the toxic question is a tough one. Yeah. I would say our paints currently are the least toxic as they ever been. First going from water-based, and then slowly we're taking things out that in the U.S. to make our paints less toxic. For instance, there's certain surfactants called alkyl phenol ethoxylates. We call them APEOs. Most of our paints don't even use these materials anymore because they have been identified as endocrine disruptors. So we continue to to respond and take things out of our paint. You know, we don't want our customers or the people in our labs and manufacturing facilities to be harmed by our products. Odorless is an interesting one because odor occurs very low concentrations, and you really have to be meticulous about every single ingredient that goes into that can of paint, and sometimes to get something completely odorless can not be really chemically feasible and cost a lot of money. But there are some options. There are some options.
Okay. All right. Moving on.
Right, another question from Zoom from Marlo Fabia. What are the emerging trends and breakthroughs in ink and surface coating industries relative to green technology?
Yeah, I mean, so one of the most, going back to the resins, you know, working with our suppliers, there are more and more offerings on resins being made from biosourced materials, and or processes that are carbon neutral, right? So I think that this is the main trend, and the most important one, because that's the biggest. That's one of the most most populous materials in our paints. So.
All right. Okay, so we have a question from YouTube by Roby Tagalog. Hi, Dr. Novitsky and Phil Sahab. Wonderful topic. I have heard of lead being added into paints before. What has been its role in paints?
Yeah, lead. Lead is a filler, and also has some scattering potential, like titanium dioxide, that make paints white. So that is its role, and yeah, that's something that we don't use anymore for a variety of health reasons. And something
Right.
I learned too is that the lead paint chips taste sweet, right? I've heard this, and that's why, like in the U.S., that's why it tastes sweet. And so if you have a bad paint that's chipping off the wall, like children will eat it and keep eating it because it tastes sweet, right? And it's toxic for you. So I learned that. I thought it was interesting. But yeah, filler and scatter. Yep.
And do you think it's still being used in different companies? I know PPG for one no longer uses this.
I don't think it is completely out globally, but it is in the U.S. for PPG, and I think mostly global.
All right.
Yep.
Okay, so I guess this is from Arlene Quintos, and I think she has a series of questions. But I think before we address this, I think that I just saw a question that came through via Zoom. So this is a question by Sir Wilfredo Pansacola. He asks, if we are planning to change the paint color, is it advisable to paint over the old paint, or is there another more effective way?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on how old the paint is and what color the paint is. So if you have like a very dark wall, like kind of what's behind me, I would use a primer first, because primers are, they stick well to things. They're low in titanium dioxide and they're cheaper, right? So I would rather use something cheaper to cover up the darkness of the wall, and then pay a little more money for a very durable paint to go over top, right? But generally, yes, you probably just want to paint over the existing the existing paint that's there. So.
Let's see. All right, I'm actually, so I think in the interest of time, we still have about like 8 minutes. So perhaps we can entertain a couple more questions now. So I'm gonna read it from Zoom. So this is from Sir Marlo Fabia. Again, he's very engaged when it comes to this topic. So given the paint and coating ingredients, what dictates the final functional and resistant properties? So he was asking mildew resistance, high barrier properties, acidity or alkalinity, chemical resistance.
Yeah. So it's hard to answer all those together.
Yeah.
But chemical resistance is mainly about the chemistry of your resin.
Yep.
Right, and whether it's a vinyl polymer or all acrylic polymer or a styrene acrylic, and you could also start to get into whether those materials cross-link or not. If they cross-link, then they will be more resistant. They'll have better chemical resistance, right? And then it's also about the ratio of your polymer to, let's say, your filler or titanium dioxide, right? The polymer is a very good barrier. And the more fillers you put in, the more interfaces you have, the more holes you're basically putting in your film, right? So those are the two main things that will dictate chemical moisture resistance, things like this. So,
all right, okay. So I guess this will be our last virtual question, because we also have to give out a couple of chemistry model kits. So this last question is it came from YouTube from Ryan Nove Huang. So he asks, what are some tests that you do to assure the quality of paint? And then there's another question from Zoom that says, why do white paints turn yellow? So I guess, these are people who are just like interested in learning really how to perhaps like even qualitatively inspect paints if they're still good or not.
yep. So quality, so we create formulas in R&D, and this formula, we put through a wide variety of tests to prove that this formula is very durable, or it's very washable, or it's very fade resistant. And then we supply this this formula to the plant, to our manufacturing facility, along with a variety of tests that to make sure that they are making the paint the correct way. And so these tests are like, we'll measure the viscosity of the paint. It will measure what the gloss of the paint is. So they'll actually take the paint out of the tank and measure gloss and viscosity. They'll measure density. They'll measure something we call tint strength, which is how white the paint is. And this makes sure that the customer will, when tinted at the store, when we put the color in at the store, that they'll get the right color, right? So there are a whole bunch of tests like this to make sure the quality of our paint is good. Yeah.
All right. So I guess that caps our Q&A. And then now, we're going to move on to the giveaway. So we're giving out 2 organic chemistry model kits. So the way we're going to do this is that we're going to ask Ted to just ask one question. Whoever is the fastest to give the correct answer on Zoom and on YouTube will be the winner. So ganun na lang. It's just gonna be
All right.
Yeah, brute force.
All right. So
Okay.
what is the chemical in paint that provides light scattering or hiding properties of the product?
All right. The fastest on Zoom and YouTube will win. Type your answers in. Could you repeat the question again, Ted?
Yes. what ingredient in paint provides the light scattering or hiding potential of the paint?
All right. So we're giving them a minute to answer.
Mhm.
But I guess we already have. Okay. And then I like this game. we'll do things. Yeah. We'll give out our prizes this way
Mhm.
from this point on. The best.
I don't see an answer in YouTube.
Oh yeah,
yet.
no one's answering on YouTube. Sa ating
Mhm.
po mga sa ating po mga YouTube participants, type your answers in. All right. So I guess like that we'll just give people like another minute to
Okay.
answer on YouTube. Okay.
I hope it's not too hard.
Oh, we have a lot of answers on Zoom. I like, and then answers are trickling in
All right.
from YouTube.
Mhm.
All right. So what's the answer, Ted?
Titanium dioxide.
All right. Okay.
Yes.
So our winner from JP, could you look what could you check who won from Zoom? Our winner from YouTube is Evelyn Kahukop.
Mhm.
She
Okay, so
dioxide.
our Zoom winner is, if I read this right, is Keisha Diane Aku. I can't read the whole name, but Keisha Diane
Acumbre.
Akumbre. Yeah, so
All
I can just,
right. Congratulations, Diane, and congratulations, Miss Evelyn Kahukop.
Nice job.
Yeah.
Yep.
Please message us at philscihub@gmail.com or send us a message through our Facebook
Facebook page.
Messenger.
Yep.
Facebook page, and then we'll coordinate kung paano po namin mapapadala sa inyong organic
Yeah.
chemistry model kit. So, ayan. And then, to JP has something to present.
Yep.
Wait, JP, okay, I think all right, can you see my screen?
All right. So, in behalf of everybody here in here in Zoom and those in YouTube and all of us here at PhilSci Hub, we would like to present the certificate of appreciation to Dr. Ted Novitsky of PPG Industries Incorporated for delivering this webinar, The Science of Protecting and Beautifying the World with Paints and Coatings, organized by the Filipino Science Hub and held via Zoom and YouTube on the 16th day of October 2021. Signed Dr. Jeffrey Bunkin, President, Filipino Science Hub, and yours truly, Vice President of Filipino Science Hub. So thank you very much, Ted, for your very engaging talk. And I think a lot of our participants are super engaged. And I mean, the questions are keep piling.
There's a lot of unanswered questions, Ted.
Yep.
And then so we've had like a highly engaged audience, and then at the same
Yep.
time, earlier on when Ted was talking about polymer science, as he actually said that would be a second topic that will be for a comeback. So
Wow.
Yep. Well, I'd be happy to address some of those questions if you want to, if you could find some common ones and forward them along. So.
Yeah. So we can actually we can perhaps forward the questions to you.
Sure.
Send us like like a set of answers, and we can even post the answers on our website and our Facebook page.
Great.
So a broader scope of audience could benefit from it. So
great.
Ted, thank you so much for doing our country a favor. So, we've had a total of about 225 participants from different parts of the country, and then most of these are actually educators. And by the way, for those of you who were asking for copies of the presentation, this webinar is recorded and will be uploaded on our YouTube channel. So you can just keep checking the recording. Yun po, may replay, there's a replay. So it'll always be Ted talking on those slides, right? And on all the contents that he's put together. So thank you so much. And to our audiences, maraming salamat po uli sa patuloy na pagsama sa amin. So like we said, we will be populating all of your weekends, for the remainder of the year. and also for the rest of 2022. So Dindy and JP did a great job of populating your weekend calendars with very exciting seminars and workshops. So yeah, maraming salamat po uli sa inyo, and we'll see you on Saturday naman. So we have our very first math webinar. And then Ted, if we could invite you to our debriefing session after this, it would be great to have a very quick discussion. Okay, and then so the link to the certificate of participation will be sent via.
Wait, I'll send it here.
Okay, via the Zoom chat box and also the YouTube chat box. All right. Maraming salamat po uli sa inyo. And then I guess like JP, like for the benefit of those who might miss the link, you guys can check out the YouTube recording. The link to the certificate of attendance will be on the description box.
Yep. I'll also put it on the comment section. So.
All right. Maraming salamat po uli sa inyo. Thank you so much. You all take care and enjoy the rest of your weekend.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Ted,
Right.
I sent the link on LinkedIn, on your LinkedIn account.
Okay.
All right.
Yes,
Doc Jeff, can you wait? Let's first let it sit for a while. This evaluation form.
Oh,
Okay.
sure.
People might not catch it.
JP,
Do we have the debrief now?
We might have to wait for a couple more minutes, Ted. But yeah,
Okay.
yeah. We can move on to the debriefing room with well, I guess like not yet because we're live.
You can make me the host, and then you guys can proceed.
Okay. And then JP, would you like to also give them some reminders about about accuracy of info that they're providing?
Yeah. Please ensure correct spelling of your names and your email addresses, because if you have a mistake on your if there are misspelling on your email address, magba-bounce back lang po yan. So kindly check your names and your email addresses. And yeah, I hope that we already have like 23 responses, so I guess the Google form is working fine.
All right.
All right. We will move on to the debriefing.
Right.
All right. Maraming salamat po. Enjoy your tanghalian. Enjoy your lunch.
All
Enjoy your
right.
weekend.
Bye. Thank you.
Have a nice weekend, guys.
Bye.
Bye.